NASCAR says they're willing to suspend drivers and fine OEMs, plus Brad Keselowski getting a new crew chief in 2025. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. Let's get right into the news, because if we talk about the tweet that stopped me in my tracks, or somebody said that NASCAR is better off under Brian France than under the current leadership regime, we'll be here for the next hour as I lay out my reasons for why that is completely wrong. So we'll just get into the news for the day. Starting off with Elton Sawyer, who went on to SiriusXM NASCAR Wednesday morning and said that NASCAR is willing to suspend drivers and fine the OEMs in the future if the trend of race manipulation continues. He said that the governing body is willing to take these dramatic steps to ensure that the integrity of the sport stays intact. And they absolutely should look at doing that. So Elton Sawyer, when he was on there speaking, he brought up a few things that I think a lot of fans are probably like, why didn't you just do that in this situation? For the instance that happened at Martinsville, Elton said that the focus was on the team executives. That's something that they haven't done before. They haven't suspended team executives for things like this happening. So in total, they end up suspending 9 people, issuing $600,000 in fines, and then take away 50 points from each driver and each team in this situation. So 300 points in total, essentially, is what the cumulative amount was. So that was something new that they haven't done. But to the criticism from some of the fan base saying that you should have fined the OEMs in this situation, Elton said that there currently isn't any language in the rulebook that allows them to do that. And this is where I think NASCAR is stuck in a pretty unenviable position, where if they do go ahead and fine them, then fans are like, well, you're not following your rule book. You're just making up the rules as you go. And then when they don't fine them, which is what happened, fans are like, well, you're not doing enough to curb the situation. Ultimately, it's a lose-lose for NASCAR when it comes to the OEMs here, because on one hand, the fans are like, do more. And then if they do more in this situation, fans are like, well, you're breaking your own rules. You're just making them up as you go, like you always do. Okay, what do you want us to do in this scenario? Elton did say that the fact that there's no language about fining OEMs in the rulebook will be addressed this offseason, and hopefully will be enough to curb this going into the future. But he said that the governing body is willing to escalate these penalties to get this to stop. And eventually you have to reach that breaking point, right? Where, teams, OEMs, drivers, they have to look at it and be like, okay, it's not worth the penalty anymore. Because I'm not sure if $200,000, essentially per team, 100 for the driver, 100 for the team, is enough to fully deter it. It could be, maybe it is, I hope it is, but ultimately you're going to have to hit them maybe with something major. I don't know if you hit them with the MWR, like death sentence, the SMU death sentence, back with the Pony Express, or do you just go full Formula One Spygate and hit them with a financial number that makes everybody stop in their tracks and go, holy crap, they mean business this time. Like, they're not messing around anymore. Maybe that's the direction you go. The NFL approach with Bountygate and stuff like that. I think that's probably the way to go if you really want to send a message, because I'm not sure if suspending the guy that's 19th in points for, the final race of the season does much there, other than the fact that, like, I guess you can't, have him be there to potentially manipulate a race. But like, if they get a fill-in driver, then that goes as well. Or do you suspend the whole team? Like, you can't even come to the racetrack, but then you fall into a charter issue as well as a TV contract issue. So there's a whole lot of things at play there. That's just not possible. So ultimately, NASCAR did what they thought was best in this situation to potentially curb it. They're willing to go further. I'm happy they said that they're willing to go further, because I'm not 100% sure if this is enough to deter it yet. I hope it is. I don't want to see this happen. I don't want to see race manipulation continue on, because ultimately it makes a sport look bad. It hurts the integrity of the sport, and you have questions now going into your championship race that absolutely should not be there. And nobody wants to be talking about this when we should be talking about the 4 drivers that will be racing for a title this weekend. Now, I see a ton of people on the internet saying it's the format. You got to change the format. We've only seen this happen during this elimination style format. That's not true. We've seen stuff like this happen multiple times. It just hasn't happened in the way that you're seeing it happen now. And if you do have a full 36 race points championship, you get down to the final race, say that Tyler Reddick and Kyle Larson are 1-2 in the points, and they're separated by 2 points going into this race. You can very much manipulate that race the same way that they just manipulated Martinsville or the Roval a couple years ago with Cole Custer. You can still do that just not in the elimination format. So, I mean, it takes it down from your, chances of doing it from, I don't know, what, 3 races, potentially 4 races, down to essentially 1 race there. If you had a full season that comes down to the last race of the year, any format can be manipulated. It absolutely can be. Race manipulation has been happening even before this. I mean, you can go all the way back to 2003 in the Truck Series Championship. Brendan Gaughan ends up losing that race because Jim Smith and Ultra Motorsports entered 2 additional trucks in that final race at Homestead, and one of those trucks spun out and took Brendan Gaughan out. But those 2 trucks were entered to take potential points away from Brendan Gaughan. So we've seen things like this happen. Guys giving up the lead so that another driver can lead a lap and get a point back when that was a thing. So I think what we saw on Saturday was a pretty egregious example of that. 2013 Richmond, egregious. Kevin Harvick at Talladega, egregious. Stuff like that. The Roval with Cole Custer, egregious. So you're always going to see stuff like this play out, but ultimately you need to have a penalty system in place that really deters this from ever happening again. And I think NASCAR has laid the groundwork for this, and now they've sent the warning shot to be like, hey, do it again, we're going up to this. And then do it again, you go to that. Or maybe you just go straight from the ground floor to the top flight of the stairs and you skip everything in between and you just lay it down and be like, this is what's going to happen, and scare everybody in the process. So I'm happy to see that they said that they're willing to go higher. Now we'll just have to wait and see if it happens again, just how high they will go. Turns out maybe Matt McCall doesn't like King's Hawaiian rolls, because it sounds like Brad Keselowski will have a new crew chief in 2025, as Matt McCall is expected to depart Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing at the end of the season and head over to a Chevy team where he might be inspired to take a different position over there. You should connect the dots if you haven't already. It does sound like rumors are suggesting that Jeremy Bolins, who left the 21 of the Wood brothers, is likely to end up at Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing atop the box for Brad Keselowski. We'll have to wait for an official announcement on that. But in their time together, Brad Keselowski and Matt McCall had some success. 1 win, 17 top 5s, 36 top 10s, 2 playoff appearances, and honestly, McCall helped Brad Keselowski turn that team around. Obviously, Roush Fenway Racing, before Brad came in, was a meddling team, and Brad has turned them into a team that can contend for wins, week in and week out. Both cars went to victory lane this year. They've won multiple races the last 2 seasons. They've been a much better team than what it was before Brad got there, and Matt McCall is part of that. Now, there's a lot of people on the internet that are critical of Matt McCall, saying that he's one of the worst crew chiefs out there, and at times does he make bad decisions? You can make that argument. Obviously, 2019 Summer Daytona with Kurt Busch, when he was his crew chief, that's the one that everybody points to and is like, that was one of the worst calls in crew chiefing history, which it was. He should have stayed out because he would have won the race, and instead, Justin Haley ends up winning it there as well. But that's a different story. Matt McCall, though, did help turn around Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, and now it sounds like he's off to potentially chase another thing over with the Chevy team. But for Brad, I think that a change might be good. Obviously, they won their first race together, the first race for Brad as a team owner and driver back at Darlington in May. And since then, they've been good, but at Martinsville this past weekend, he looked really strong. Doesn't get the win. That goes to Ryan Blaney. For Brad, though, maybe a change atop the pit box is sort of the direction that he needs to go. And I think it's worth a trial, the same way that I think that Booty Barker moving aside and, having Bubba get a different crew chief is a good idea as well. So let me know what you think about NASCAR in their comments on potentially suspending drivers, penalizing the OEMs going forward if the race manipulation continues. Brad Keselowski probably getting a new crew chief. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.